Welcome back to another episode of Taking Inventory. I'm James Barrow here with my co-host Daniel Druger, and this week we are doing the first episode of a series that we're going to be doing throughout the rest of the year about how creators are taking back control from the walled gardens. And this week in particular, we really dive into how two brothers used a newsletter and email to create basically like their own holding company that does a bunch of really awesome things.
Yeah, and they've grown this, over the years to tens of thousands of subscribers. They've done it organically. They talk about how they're using data to really own that customer relationship and build a multimedia business, and how they're doing it with the right ethos to do the right thing for their customers and only do businesses that they believe in.
And it's also, I think, just a good lesson for the walled gardens to not overplay their hands, because these guys, they found a way to exist pretty much without them.
So with that, let's dive right into the episode. Today, we welcome Anthony Vennare, founder and CEO of Fitt Insider, the must-read newsletter that comes out every Tuesday and breaks down the most important developments impacting the business of fitness and wellness. Since founding Fitt Insider, Anthony and his brother Joe have expanded the business to include the Fitt Insider podcast, industry job boards, Fitt Capital, where they invest and advise health and wellness companies, and hopefully we'll learn a lot more about what they have in store in the future. So, Anthony, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you.
Thanks for having me. Really excited to chat.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, I think just given, all that you've done with this, we'd love to kind of start with just your founding story of how you started this, with your brother. Like, how is it you got to this point? We'd love to dive more into it.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very, very long story with many companies and things kind of from, I think if you go back from the beginning, it's always been health and wellness for us. But, the origin story really is I joined the Marines out of high school. And before that, I was an athlete and Joe was an athlete and fitness was just our thing. So, getting into the military and then Joe going on to play sports in college, play football, and fitness was just kind of this bond that we had. And when I got out of the military and when, he graduated and became a teacher, it was still this thing that we did. We went and we went to workshops, trainings, everything we ever kind of built around our personal interests was fitness. So turned that into our business. It was, started opening gyms, and there's a very long trail of things that we've done that we don't have to go into detail, but whether it was owning gyms, creating content very early on as fitness creators and influencers before that was really a thing, or building our own line of equipment and selling that, or creating a number of different media companies and properties. And it was always health and wellness based. And over the course of all of the different companies and, I'd say probably 10 years of Joe and I working together, we had a bunch of companies that did really well, some that did not. And what we realized very early on was it was all about kind of owning your audience and controlling the content and distribution of it. Whether we were selling fitness equipment, programming, whether we had our gyms, the only thing that ever stood out to us was the media and that owned audience and really connecting directly with your consumers. So everything we did was always kind of tagged on to a media company. And that led to Fitt Insider, which was we were working on another project, and it really became, we know that the health and wellness industry is changing. No one talks about it the way that we think that the industry should be talked about. Why don't we start doing that? And randomly a newsletter that at the time was like blue logo and random things that we could think about. We just started sending it to 5 friends. And those 5 friends became 50 and 500 and 5,000 super fast.
Crazy.
And we didn't really plan for it to be anything besides like an own channel of what we were going to do next, or just a way to keep up. But that was really the start of the intentions were there because we knew that media was valuable, but there was no plan or understanding of what it could be.
Looking back kind of on that journey, like, is it kind of crazy for you guys to think about how much leverage creators have now versus when you guys first started? Like when you guys, were fitness creators just getting going on this, did you like ever imagine that could be like your full-time job, like around that? And did it feel like at that time, like were your friends were kind of like, what are you guys doing? Just like creating all this content? Or were they like, oh wow, this could be huge?
Yeah, it was the time when we had very successful gyms too, which was, we had at the time, I think 5 or 6 gyms, some CrossFit, some that we owned on our own brands. And we started going online, and there was no one really doing it. This was at the time Tim Ferriss talked about it on his podcast a while ago. There was this like 6 pack abs thing. It was all SEO driven, scammy fitness, sell PDFs. This was when the Melissa Woods and the Kayla Itzlet from Sweat, they were getting started. We were doing that too, and we just happened to understand SEO and content really well. And at one point, I think just on the online side, we're doing 100K a month in fitness program sales, and no one understood it. They're like, "This isn't a thing. Like, this doesn't make any sense." So yeah, it was something that we pretty much lucked into. But I got inspired by like a book that I read. It was one of Gary Vee's early books about content. So we did that, and that was a moment forever from that point that content was going to drive everything that we did, whether it was a media company or not.
And then starting with the newsletter and obviously seeing that really fast growth that you talked about, at what point did you and your brother look and say, okay, this has the potential to be a real business. Let's go in on this. Like, let's spend our time building this up and making this the project that we focus on.
Yeah, so we launched it in 2019, sending it monthly, just randomly. And then it was, and we were running another company at the time that was connected to Fitt Insider. And then early 2020, I ran into some major health issues. And we also we were in the process of selling our other company or I ran into some major health issues, and then COVID hit. And what we realized was, as I was kind of dealing with my health issues, I kind of dove deep into the newsletter because I wasn't working full time, but I could write and send stuff. It would only take one a week. And that's what took off from it. It was me sitting down, starting in 2020, we're going to do once a week. We're going to really put the time and effort into it. And Joe had launched the podcast a little bit before then as well. And we said, we're going to do this and at least consistently do it more. And that was when it became a thing, but there was still no plan. There was no monetization strategy, anything other than we love this space. We want to build in it. The reputation and the value of having 5,000 executives from every top company organically following you and raving. Like, we have a feedback page on the site that's like kind of a wall of love, and there's probably 100 or so from CEOs of every company in the space saying like, this is the best thing ever. We're like, let's just do that and see what happens. And it didn't even become a real thought or an actual full-time job until early 2021.
That's crazy. So 2 years, this is a labor of love without any payback. So I imagine you're still operating your other businesses to pay for your life. And then, at what point did you decide, okay, we're going to start turning on the revenue spigot here? And like, how did you go through that thought process and what was right for the brand or wrong?
Yeah, we were lucky that we had a number of exits. So it wasn't really about the full-time job as much as doing what we wanted to do. And in 2021, we really started to focus on it, but still it was not about the revenue. One of our last companies was advertising based with revenue, kind of the media side. So we just hated that. We were burnt out from it. So we, at the same time in early 2021, we got kind of introduced to the crazy side of venture and all these massive family offices and funds, and Packy and Mario were doing kind of we called it the venture and media flywheel game of you have this audience and you can get that kind of deal flow and access. So we focused on that. We joined the fund as advisors. We started writing angel checks. We started spending a ton of time behind the scenes, partnering or doing diligence for company or for funds and just family offices and getting really deep into that. And that's where most of the revenue is coming from, just us consulting on big projects. But also we were starting to tag in our money with the deals that we were seeing or take deals that we were seeing to other companies and to other funds. And without really trying, we were seeing more deals getting, the founders wanted us on their cap table, wanted us to help be advisors, consultants, whatever. And that was what we did for all of 2021, just really focused on not bringing in advertising or any type of revenue that way so that the product can be very pure. And what could we do if we built this for a fund? Because, it's great to have $1 million in revenue from advertising. And if you wanted to ever exit from that, whatever that multiple may be, but if you can build something that is valuable to a 500 or $700 million fund, it's a lot more valuable than just the media side. And that's what we were trying to do. And all of 2021 was us really buckling down and figuring out how to continually build content that's not just content, but valuable enough that People want your expertise and the analysis and the data that you can provide people, all of that. And that's when we realized that not only is the media side a very good business, but the ecosystem of owning this distribution channel that is where most people get their information in a really, really big industry is worth more than ads, is worth more than consulting, is worth more than everything. It's like this big bundle of almost like you could build an entire holding company and own multiple things through this channel of media.
Fast forward to today. So is Fit Capital now that is your guys' fund?
Yes. Joe and I, so the way that it's set up now, we own Fit Capital. Well, we have Fit Insider, which is the media property everyone knows, newsletter, podcast, jobs board, kind of research and content that comes from there. Underneath that, we have a few services that aren't very public yet, but are launching. We have recruiting because our jobs board is just insanely popular and has driven tens of thousands of job seekers a month to different companies. And then we do have a consulting arm that we spun up, which is more research consulting. So it's what we've done in the past where someone wants a market map, wants us to deep dive on data. The way that we get our research for the content, people want that specifically for a company and then use that to make, acquisition decisions or planning decisions or help those companies fundraise. And then obviously underneath the jobs board, there's a lot of paid stuff that is there. And then we have Fit Capital, which is the investment arm. We're lucky that we can have one big family office partner. We're there, so we get to invest. I don't have to manage too many LPs. It's really cool. And we also kind of have our own capital alongside that. And we're going to be raising multiple funds and bringing on partners down the road. But for now, it's writing 250 to 500K checks into pre-seed companies. We've made 26 investments over the past 18 months. And then we just acquired Well-To-Do, which is a version of Fit Insider based out of Europe and the UK and kind of international markets. We see that opportunity in the international markets is just unbelievable. It's so far behind the States in terms of development, funding, trends, but it's all coming and there's still so much money out there. So really owning that market, and that's about 30,000 in industry executives that read that newsletter every week. And then we recently launched a trial called Headlines, which is mental health, wellness, and psychedelics. We had a really cool writer that wrote for us that had a passion for that space. So now we're working with her to kind of test what would it look like to build, even deeper industry specific things, whether it be women's health, psychedelics and mental health, or other just categories of content that don't sit under, because Fit Insider is a very broad range of topics.
And, going back maybe to talk a little bit about Fit Capital, but also, 2020 to 2022 is a really interesting time for the industry as, COVID, people working from home. I think people really starting to take heed of their fitness, their health, and take a closer look at what they're putting in their body or how they're planning for their futures. What did you see during that period from an investment standpoint? I mean, a lot of capital was being put in, kind of markets were a little crazy. You were in a particular space that was really hot from a consumer standpoint, people paying attention. And so how did you guys stay focused on this is our thesis, these are the right investments, and not get too broad during that period where I'm sure it was very easy to potentially.
This is a really fun topic for me because we're not investors, we're founders. We built and sold companies our whole lives. For the first 8 years of my life, I didn't even know venture capital was a thing. I just thought you had to have money to launch companies. So, in going through that process, it was very uninformed investors. They were also they weren't strict with their diligence or capital in a market that is hard to understand. But in reality, in reality, what was happening in health and fitness was very predictable. At home was going to go and come and go, but still be bigger long term. The trends around wearables and other stuff was happening years beforehand. Whoop wasn't a new company. Aura wasn't a new company. Peloton was a new company. People didn't know about these things, and the magic of, oh, these just appeared, but they've been companies for years. So at that time, it was just us, especially our experience being like trainers. I was a trainer. I was a gym owner. I was doing all of these things. It was just very logical for us to say, this is what we know to be true. And whether the data is changing at this very moment, we know it will continue to be true long term. And there were definitely points where we were like, are we the crazy ones for not backing these things or not acting this insane way? But it very quickly became obviously not the case. And The health and wellness industry, digital health, fitness, all of that, there wasn't that many investment dollars or funds focused on it before COVID. A lot of the ones that said they were during COVID, the times they were, but they didn't know it. And now they kind of bailed on it, or they're doing very little of it, or they're focused on very small sectors of it. So, but that acceleration, that opportunity, and what the growth from the consumer perspective means is the market's bigger than ever. It's not going anywhere. And now there's just so much more white space from the investment side. So, as hard as it was to watch people put dollars to work that aren't going to come back, or funds, or sorry, companies and founders take money they shouldn't have, or deal with investors that just aren't great, it's probably the best time to be investing in this space, especially if you have a really specific plan and kind of system of how you're doing it.
And I guess like given that the space is expanding so rapidly, and you mentioned even like the international markets, like for you guys, and maybe this is more on the research and newsletter side, but do you see sort of the B2B media opportunity, like for you guys to become obviously like a paid distribution point, but also just sort of more ingrained to how these businesses reach, you know, reach consumers? Like is that a huge part of the playbook? And how did you guys, like, just given that you guys are doing so many things, is there like a way you partition it, like what percentage you guys are going to spend your time on, or is it all kind of all interwoven, kind of just like it kind of works as like an ecosystem, and that's just how it is?
Yeah, I can send you the image if you guys want to share it later. It's our flywheel, kind of
Okay.
the flywheel of if you sit, us in the options that what we do at the center of it, whether you are looking for funding for PR, distribution, hiring, kind of consulting, go to market strategy, capital, any of those things we do, and that we did them very specifically because it's not just that we invest in companies, it's that we start companies now and we put them through our system, or we meet founders very early. Because what we saw over the course of the 2 years during COVID was we would get I have the emails, founders that would email us and say, I have this idea. I got it from your newsletter, or this newsletter helps me. Can I have data for my deck or research or understanding, or can I get on the call and spend time? And that company goes on to raise $20 million and is a massive success. Yes, we can put in 100K, 250K, whatever, but I can also, at that time of idea, get involved as almost a founder, co-founder, you know, whether it be a deeper investor at that time, something to help them accelerate, but also, do what we do by helping them and be early. So this ecosystem, this flywheel that we call it, does all of that, whether it be distribution, hiring, all the things I mentioned. And I'm just lucky that I have a second version of me who's smarter, which is my brother. He's a more organized, smarter version of me, and we are very close. We've built a number of companies together. We understand each other, and we also have a number of people based in Pittsburgh, which is an affordable city to run a company, that have worked on a number of projects with us that are based in media. So we have a killer team, an awesome group of people, and Joe and I can tag team things together and really, if I'm more up on capital, he can pick up the slack on content. Or if I'm investing time to grow certain products and content features we're launching, he can help on the capital side. And really for us, we thought about this as almost like a 20-year plan of, if we think about what is now considered a $7 trillion market for health and wellness broadly, if we owned not only the B2B, but now we're working on some B2C distribution points as well. If we own those from the media perspective and the news and research and content and discovery, what else can we do besides sell this company? The goal is never to sell it. It's to build things within it and make this kind of this trampoline that accelerates things very fast.
Interesting. And is on the B2B media side, especially in the health and wellness space, is there anyone that does this like well right now, and like actually understands it from like the founder operator point of view? Or is this like just a bunch of legacy kind of groups running around attempting to do that? I don't know if there's a political way to answer it, but yeah, is there any insight you can
Yeah.
kind of give us on how that is today?
In our industry specifically?
Yeah, in yours, yes. And I
Oh,
can say in ad tech, for example, like, there's just, I would say 99% of them are charlatans, like running around, don't really understand any of it. And then there's like, a small group of people who are very trustworthy and can cut through the noise, but like it's shocking how dumb some people are who have a huge megaphone on like CNBC, for example, talking about, different components of it. So yeah, just kind of curious what it looks like in your guys' industry.
Oh my God, this is my favorite question. I'll name them all. I hate them. Not only there's two parts. The first is brands that have been around for 40 years that play the game where it's all pay to play, scammy webinars, just not great. The same places that were either masquerading as like industry groups or other things or putting on events. And it's just all very basic and pay to play. They don't do any research or forward thinking and they don't help drive the industry forward in any way. And then there's been a growth of three or four that have popped up recently. I would love to just say the names and make it, but being political, black and white sites that are similar to ours, very scammy ways of this tech news and other thing where they just copy our content, plain and simple. Whether we release the news first that we find that we know they're not finding anywhere else, they copy it. Whether they release reports that, half of the writing is some version of what I specifically wrote in a newsletter or a report, and they're charging people to be, get listed as a most innovative company or get considered for a most innovative company for $599. And, anyway, and they sell your emails and they sell your info and all of this stuff. So that's probably the hardest part but they all make money. The industry, those people make money. They're all doing hundreds of thousands, if not more a year in revenue. There's a clear differentiation between us. There's not even a close consideration for the user's perspective or the readers, but they're doing it. And that's, I think, across the board. Every industry has this version of very pay-to-play, salesy, scammy B2B industries. And that's why it's been very hard for us to stay the course, because when you pass up on hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it the right way, I see why they all break and go that way. But then there's this whole wave, like I mentioned, of like stealing content and copying the way that we do things, and even the messaging of how you describe yourself being us is infuriating. But Joe and I's kind of plan is they won't last, because if you do the thing right. It was funny. There was in our office of one of our last companies, the mural said the right thing is the right thing. It was really big as you came in our office, and that's the case. If you do the right thing, you'll win in the end. It just takes more time and isn't as flashy or cool sometimes. So we're focused on that, whether it be, our jobs board is free. There's 1,000 jobs on there. 25,000 job seekers a month go to that. Well, it's much easier to run a pallet or launch a thing and charge $250 a jobs post and maybe have 10 or 20 or 30. And that's good money. But ours is free. And now we're building the services of recruiting on top of that. So I'd rather make $100,000 or $30,000 for a placement and be the best trusted source in recruiting and kind of content creation and driving people around the HR side from our industry than I would to make $250 for a posting. And that's kind of been our theory all along of where we're going with things.
I mean, I love that philosophy. And I think, it works obviously in B2B, both B2B and B2C. But as you're advising companies or making investments or talking to founders, kind of how do you take that ethos and bring it to the B2C side of it, where it's, do the right thing or build your audience and then monetize it in another way? Because I imagine, especially in fitness, there is this, it's very noisy and there's a lot of charlatans. And as you start to get into influencers or micro creators, they're selling all kinds of things. And so how do you talk to founders and business owners and say, okay, start to own your audience, give things away for free, build it over time, and then you can monetize in the right way and stay that course? How do you talk to folks around that?
Like as we're helping founders?
Yeah.
It really depends on the product, but I mean, there's really great examples. A company called Bird and Bee that we invested in. Fertility supplements, at-home testing, content, community. It's just about, building, we always call them communities. There's a guy, I think his name's Greg Eisenberg, maybe how you say that. And he's on Twitter that is all about building communities.
Yeah,
he's a really good example of somebody that, he's super smart. He's done it in a lot of awesome ways about building these holding company, community-driven things. I've always looked at what he's done, and you build a community, you create the content. It might be a smaller group or it might be a specific group, but like fertility as an example. very scary subject, intimidating subject for a lot of people, and very, just hard all around. And what they did was they built really good products, really cool brand, and then they spent just a ton of time providing valuable free content, and more importantly, providing like a relatable place for people to go. And that's it. And you think the another good example, Recover Athletics, we sold to Strava that we were an early investor in, creating a brand around mobility for runners. When we invested, everyone's like, why would it's such a small category? That's such a crazy little thing. It's not a venture scale company. It was. Strava owns it now and they're crushing it. But also,
Yeah.
if you think about the number of runners and how it is just so intimidating to start running, get hurt while you're running, run a marathon, all of that. And they consistently put out, what it seems almost like boring, slow media around how to prepare prehab and rehab for that stuff. And they did it and it worked really, really well. So it's just kind of believing in that. And it's not, doesn't always look the same, but it's really owning that, kind of putting up that flag of who you are, what you stand for with your content.
And from like the content distribution point of view, just given like we spent a lot of time at Snap and working with other walled gardens, and we always had this tension with creators because I mean ultimately we wanted creators to go ahead and create a bunch of content on our platforms because we could then sell ads against it, but then it kind of screws with the margins when you have to rev share with those creators. And like, how do you think about like interacting with the walled gardens and those channels? Like, are you guys really just like, is email the key? Like, if you can have that direct connection, like you've done your job, or is there, are they like, is Instagram like a frenemy to you, or is it just like just another channel? I don't know if you guys have like a thought process about how you interact with all these things.
Yeah, we've tried them all with all of our companies over the years, and now with this one specifically, it's kind of funny. I hate Twitter so much. It's my least favorite place, and I don't really see our audience being there. Joe does. We kind of split it up too. Joe's Twitter, my LinkedIn, the newsletter, but the email is where it's at. It's some days we have 70% open rate, reply backs. It's my email that it comes from, so my inbox is horrendously terrible, but it's so much interaction and trust and direct access. And then honestly, LinkedIn is massive for us. It is the only place that if you, and like I block a ton of people so that you don't get scam and spam and followers and requests and all of that. But what is it, 30,000 now on mine? Put out any given regular post, it'll drive thousands and thousands of clicks, and it's all real people. And then you make yourself kind of available there. So whether it's deal flow or access or clients or other things you're getting, it's there. So LinkedIn has been huge for us. Email is the kind of king of it all in SEO, having that's a really clean, non-salesy, non-ad driven site that drives people to the information they need. The jobs board again is, collecting emails on that. And Instagram is just there because you have to, but it really doesn't do much for us. So yeah, we're just focused on owning those channels and converting every single soul to the email so that we can continually kind of get them going from there.
And once you capture the email, to the extent you can talk about it, like, are there creative ways that you guys are using that either in kind of marketing life cycle and maybe taking some playbooks from the consumer side and not just sending your newsletter, not just sending updates about the company, but using those emails in a way, I don't know, segmentation, marketing life cycle, whatever it may be? Are you guys doing anything else kind of interesting that you can talk about?
No, and we should. We're trying. I don't think so yet. So for us, we just for the first year and a half, we didn't even have a website or like have a landing page. It was like send us an email to get on, or there was like a random MailChimp form that was horribly run, and we got organically to 25,000 readers on Fit Insider from
Crazy.
that, and we never spent a dime on marketing until April of this year. It just kind of organically happened. So I think we were our own worst enemy on that kind of side of it. We just didn't play the game that most people play. But now we've recently hired people and brought them on. So now we have a welcome series and we have the, re-engagement stuff. And in reality, it's more we convert them to the email, make sure that they get the kind of welcome series of who we are and they can interact with me specifically through my email, which is cool. Get them to follow on LinkedIn and other channels that we need. And that's it. And other than that, it's just send the newsletters on a regular basis. I think eventually we'll have more, but that's with new products coming. For us, owning that channel and talking to them directly, I don't want to segment and upsell and other things because we're not really selling them anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are those types of people that would buy, whether it be services we offer, someone we invest in, whatever, from there you go from Fit Insider to Fit Capital or to Well To Do or other channels in different places. But the inbox, I'll die on this hill is really just protecting them at all costs, especially like I mentioned in our industry, where if you subscribe to any other newsletter or site in our industry, you get partner emails and your stuff is sold out and you just get crap. So for us, you know what you're going to get. It's the same thing every single week forever.
Love that. Well, cool. I mean, I think, in most of our podcasts, we end with kind of a rapid fire questions and get your kind of quick response to them. That sounds like fun. We can dive into that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool.
No one has said no yet to that question, so that's good.
Yeah, it's a rhetorical question, but I'm waiting for someone to say no, and then we'll just end it there.
Just bail early.
Yeah. Spending your entire life in fitness and kind of health and wellness being top of mind, what are your top 3 habits that you live by for your own personal health?
Yes. Big one is the get up, and as soon as you get up, go outside, go for a walk. That's the one that's kind of changed my life. Second one is walking as well. I take all my calls outside of podcasts like this. I don't do Zooms anymore unless it's completely insanely necessary. And a lot of people are still not used to it, but yeah, we're taking our meetings walking, and I'm walking 20,000 steps a day on average when I have to talk to people because I'm out there moving. Kind of last one is I used to be a caffeine freak where I would drink like 7 espressos a day and it was fun, but really cutting back now and stopping before noon, which has helped my sleep and my kind of just ability to not rely on it. And I think overall help my energy levels because there's not just probably 400 or 500 milligrams of caffeine a day in different sources. Now I'm down to 100 or less.
Are you tracking all this stuff like in an app or anything, or you just know at this point?
Just kind of go. I'm very anti-tech, which is kind of funny enough. All the stuff we've written about, nothing has really stuck with me besides an Apple Watch that gives me reminders to not miss meetings. Yeah, everything else is just kind of play it by ear.
Next one, favorite health podcast that is not hosted by your brother?
Yeah, definitely not Fit Insider. I mean, I feel like every human being on earth right now is listening to Andrew Huberman.
Yeah.
There's not a single person I know that is under the age of 40 that doesn't bring up Huberman in some way. I really like that podcast. And I also have started, I think, really getting back into Peter Attia as well.
And is there a business that you'd love to see someone start in the space?
Oh man, there's thousands of them. There's a really big opportunity. If you're going to do this, anyone out there, it's kind of in the media side, fitness education, certifications, trainings, the entire career or concept of fitness. It's crap. You can buy a certification online for $299 and take a test that no one even needs you to take. And then you could say you're a certified trainer, which technically doesn't mean anything because you don't have to be a certified trainer to train anybody in any state in the United States. So, and like the American Council on Exercise is not a council. It's just a company with a really very specific, official sounding name. So rebuilding what it means to get trained, educated, certified, recertified, building a career path in health, wellness, fitness, nutrition, any of that. These companies are all doing tens and tens of millions of dollars a year selling nothing besides like certification bills. So I will fund that tomorrow if somebody has a good idea around it.
Yeah, as James knows, there's plenty of those businesses in ad tech too, certifying viewability, certifying certain technologies. That is just somebody putting a stamp because you paid them to. So yeah, maybe we'll see a fit certification in the future. We won't press you on that today though. Do you have like a biggest prediction for the health and wellness market over the next like 5-10 years?
Yeah, it's the fact that it's all going to become health and wellness. Wellness is everything. We've said this in the past, but whether it's everything's starting to butt up against healthcare in some way, but it's the consumerized version of healthcare. So as you see now with like Life Force or Hone, where it's fitness is now I'm taking testosterone replacement therapy for some people, or I'm doing certain health things, or I'm, whether it be your diet, your hormones, your medical treatment, your training, your 8 sleep, your aura, all of it is wellness. And for the negative, there's a lot of brands and companies coming in selling crap and saying it's wellness as well. So it's just going to be this continuous trend where more and more people are talking about health and wellness, while at the same time, as a whole, Americans will become less and less healthy for the foods that they're eating, things that they're doing. And then there's also going to be a massive divide. It's happening now, but this kind of wealth gap in health, we call it the health gap. Like if you don't make over a certain amount of money, you're not paying for these products and things and access and concierge doctors and things that let you kind of get healthy or have the time to get healthy. And this, especially if you're below or at the poverty line, it's just a completely unfair, different world. And that's going to continue to happen. And I'm hoping that companies come and change that. But yeah, those are the two major ones where everything is wellness. Every product, everything you see is going to have some wellness spin, which it kind of already does. Mm-hmm. And then there's just going to be a massive gap of who actually can be healthy and fit and who can't, for the most part.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. It makes you think just from a totally different point of view. But I remember I was talking to friends at Facebook. It's like 10 years ago, now Meta. And they said that, Mark had this vision of it being over time a healthcare company having healthcare related services that they could provide. And then obviously Apple, is like slowly every Apple Watch update, it's becoming a health device. And even at Snapchat, a big thing that Evan was talked about a lot, for better or worse, is that like it actually was a platform where it was good for your actual like mental like health and wellness, because it wasn't about showing things to random people and getting kind of judgment and all that stuff. So yeah, it's funny. Like I don't know what things outside of like drugs and alcohol that are like not explicitly made for health, but even there you're finding that there's a health spin to that as well. So yeah, that's crazy. So, and by that, the 7 trillion number that you talked about in terms of the TAM, I mean, that's traditional health and wellness, right? Like if you start to put Apple devices into that, does that just make that even bigger? Like, yeah, like how big is all this at the end of the day?
Well, that's the more traditional health and wellness side, but now beauty's coming into that. Now wearables and medical devices and other things that are consumer driven. I'd say that the at home concierge medical side of things, at home testing, I mean, supplements is insane. It's predicted to, I think it's double and by 2030 or something like that. And it's already just ridiculous. And that's funny. You mentioned like investing back before. That was probably the hardest thing for us was we would not invest in companies we knew weren't great products, but were going to be killer companies. And you're leaving money on the table, but back to like the right thing is the right thing. Yes, this supplement company that's selling this certain thing of creatine is going to make $10 million guaranteed, but it's not needed and it's kind of full of crap, so I can't back it. Yeah. And that was hard as well. So yeah, it's all converging around this concept of it being way more of way much bigger chunk of people's lives. Health and wellness and fitness is just going to be such a bigger spend, and it's continually growing. Especially, I mean, you guys probably see this too. Your habits, for work, it's how many people now meet you at a Barry's or go to do a workout here, go for a run and do like the run and pitch thing or walk. It's just kind of everywhere.
Yeah. So his last question, and we'll put a lot in the show notes, links to the newsletter and everything, but like where can people follow you? Where can they learn more about Fitt Insider and of your host of brands?
Yeah, Fitt Insider. It's FITT is it, not one T. So the website, newsletter, podcast, and then like I said, LinkedIn. Connect on LinkedIn for me personally, and just kind of let me know what you're working on, what's going on.
Love it. Well, we really appreciate you joining us today, Anthony. We'll put all of that for listeners in the show notes so they can go follow you. But James and I are both followers of the newsletter, and so we can vouch for it personally. So again, thank you again for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, guys, really appreciate it.
Before you go, we need your help. If you enjoyed this week's episode of Taking Inventory, then subscribe or rate wherever you listen to the podcast. And while you're at it, please share this episode or your favorite episode with a friend. We'll be back next week with another episode of Taking Inventory.